For months, we've been focusing on vaccines as the way forward in fighting COVID. And while that's certainly the case, a lot more perhaps needs to be discussed on antiviral medication, anti-COVID medication. And now there is renewed hope in that. The pharma majors Roche and Cipla have announced the arrival of the first batch of the new antibody cocktail drug. It's called casirivimab and imdevimab in India. In total, they can potentially benefit 2 lakh patients, as each of the 1 lakh packs that will be available in India offer treatment for 2 patients. And Cipla is going to be distributing the product by leveraging its strong distribution strengths across India. The drug will be available through leading hospitals and COVID treatment centers. Joining us now, Mr. V. Simpson Emmanuel, the Managing Director and CEO of Roche Pharma India. Thanks very much for being with us. Tell us a little bit about the technology here, because it's fascinating. These are monoclonal antibodies produced by recombinant DNA technology. How is that a big change from what we have in this country?
See, for one, this is one of the few very approved treatments for COVID right now that we have. There are quite a few repurposed drugs. There are a lot of things which are being used, which seem to have a benefit. But we have a very robust clinical data behind the drug that we are talking about. We have more than 13,000 odd patients in which the drug has been tested. And we've got some very interesting results as well. And which is the reason why we have this emergency use authorization, not just in India, but also in the US as well as in the European Union.
No, but Mr. Emmanuel, tell us a little bit about the technology itself. How does it fight the COVID-19 virus?
See, these are a combination of 2 antibodies, the casirivimab and imdevimab, the cocktail as we call it, are very complex monoclonal antibodies which are made in the laboratory. What they do is they mimic the immune system's ability to fight off harmful pathogens such as viruses. So they are specifically directed against what is called as the spike protein of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And this is designed to block the virus attachment and entry into the human cells. So the cocktail actually remains very effective against the widest spread of variants, and also reduces the risk of losing its neutralization potency against new emerging variants as well. So, yeah, that's about it with regards to the technology.
And how much does each dose cost?
The cost for the patient per dose is around 59,750 rupees.
And how many doses would be required typically in the case of a patient?
Combined dose of 1200 milligram that has to be given, half 600 milligram of casirivimab and 600 milligram of imdevimab.
So just under 60,000 rupees a dose. And typically how many doses would one require?
Just 1 dose.
Just 1 dose. It's a 1-dose drug, right? And each dose, is it sort of injected all together, or is it spread out?
No, it's injected all together over you can use it either as a IV formulation, where you can have the infusion over 20 to 25 minutes, not a very long period, or it can even be given subcutaneously with multiple jabs. We have to have 4 sites selected, and you can give it subcutaneously as well. It has the convenience of subcutaneous injection as well.
What is the efficacy of the drug?
See, in clinical trials, it has been shown to reduce the hospitalization and deaths by close to around 70-odd%. So, which I think is pretty significant given the context of where we are right now. And this is in a high-risk population.
Right. And who is it prescribed for? How sick would a person need to be?
See, this is primarily for the treatment of mild to moderate COVID in high-risk patients before their condition worsens. Ideally, you should use the cocktail 10 days before 10 days on the onset of symptoms, and that's when you would have the maximum benefit of the drug. It's currently not approved for severe cases or those requiring oxygen support. We have many other clinical trials which are ongoing, but as we speak, this is a place where you need to use the drug.
So in other words, would that be would the drug typically be one which is prescribed to patients who haven't yet gone to hospital?
Yeah, who have a positive COVID report, who have been diagnosed as COVID. They might have gone to the hospital or they are at home. They now they have an option of taking the drug so that they don't have to eventually go into a severe state and get hospitalized.
Right. And where all is the drug available? Is it pan-India?
It's pan-India. That's one of the reasons why we are using Cipla's wide distribution network. It'll be available both in the public as well as in the private setting.
Yeah. I'm just fascinated by monoclonal antibodies, produced by recombinant DNA technology. It's relatively new technology, as I understand it. How widespread is the use of this technology in fighting COVID in other parts of the world?
See, as I mentioned that the technology itself is not new. I mean, everyone is aware of multiple other areas where human immunoglobulin has been used. So the antibody cocktail as such are biologic products. In this case, it's G1 IgG1 monoclonal antibodies, which is produced by the recombinant DNA technology in a lab. It is very complex to develop and manufacture. It's currently approved in the US and the European Union as we speak.
Just one final question, Mr. Emmanuel. This is medication which can save lives. There's no doubt about that. Is there any thinking about making this more accessible price-wise to more people in this country? Very few people would be able to afford 59,000 rupees a dose.
I hear you, Vishnu. The only thing that I can actually say right now is we have adopted a differential pricing approach as far as this product is concerned. So what you see as a price in India is like much more subsidized when compared to what price it's available either in the US or the European Union. But what we need to see is how do we look at the overall management of COVID for a high-risk patient? If you look at all of these benefits which comes around, I think it's a pretty cost-effective therapy because it reduces the risk of hospitalization, it shortens the duration of symptoms by 4 days, and it prevents a substantial number of people from going into a condition where it's into a severe state. So having said that, we are currently working with the government to see whether we can have any kind of relaxation in terms of the GST as well as the import duty, because all of this is adding up to the cost as well. As and when we have some relaxation on these taxations, we will pass it on to the patient as well.
Sure. And the reason I ask you this, and of course you are the MD and CEO of Roche, but Cipla, who you've partnered with in this, they are renowned for having actually brought down costs for HIV medication, AIDS medication. It saved millions of lives. And therefore, the question in a situation like this is there any way, to bring down the costs?
So I already mentioned that there are a lot of channel margins and taxations which are as to how we can bring down the cost. That's number one. And as I already mentioned, the pricing that we have launched in India is a completely differential price specific to India, which you wouldn't find this price if you go to the US or in the European Union at this point of time.
All right. So, well, it's certainly medication which brings hope to a lot of people. Hopefully, it would be more accessible in the future. But it's very interesting. And, the fight against COVID, once it goes beyond just vaccines and social distancing to actual therapeutic, to medicines, that takes the fight to an altogether different level. Thanks very much for being with us.